Good evening, guys. So today we'll carry on with examination on nose after the brief clinical history introduction which we had a couple of days back. So next slide. Okay. So first of all, the nose examination includes not directly. You don't go directly see the nose inside. First of all, see the external nose. See do you find any abnormalities there, any crooked nose deformity, whether the shape of the nose is changed, any scars or sinuses over this area, any scars or sinuses or scars because of a previous surgery, all those things have to be noted. And guys, nose not only includes nose, we also have to see the throat as well as the neck. So as we're going to go inside, shall we start now, Yashwant? Is it okay?
Sure, sir.
Yes, okay. So first of all, you're going to see first the examination of nose to assess the function, the airway, whether it's patent or it's blocked or the resistance of the airway is okay, and also the smell with the help of few smell particles that we'll be carrying it along with us during your examination time. Okay, so like I told you, you also have to include the mouth and the pharynx when you talk about the nose here. So the common nasal symptoms that a patient present to us are the nasal block or the airway obstruction, which could be unilateral, bilateral, rhinorrhea or running nose, sneezing, which could be either continuous or most commonly seen in the morning in case of allergic rhinitis. Differences in smell. It could be either hyposmia, anosmia, or parosmia, cacosmia. Facial pain and headache because of sinusitis. And also there's another condition called as Sludder's neuralgia, which can also cause facial pain and a headache. And snoring. Snoring is associated with obstructive sleep apnea, and also because of tissues that are present inside the nose, which is causing the patient to open the mouth and breathe, and in turn the patient will have snoring. Next. Next slide, please. Right. So like I told you, first of all, introduce yourself to the patient. The patient should be very much comfortable with you to tell you about all the things about him, and then allow you to touch him and you're going to examine him. Next, position of the patient. The patient should be sitting in front of you and you should be focusing the light onto his nose. I have few videos to demonstrate as to how to do it at the end of this slide, or in between the slides. We'll see it now. And then you examine the external nose, where you examine for the nasal tip, vestibule, and also the nasal airway. Then we go for anterior rhinoscopy, which is done with an instrument called as Studicum nasal speculum. Posterior rhinoscopy done with a post-nasal mirror, post-nasal examination, and then finally the neck examination. Why are we seeing the neck in case of a nose? In case of nasal malignancies, we will have some nodes which will be present over the level 2, 3, 4 of the neck region. And also in case of acute sinusitis and other infections of the nose, we will have some nodes present over the anterior triangle of the neck as well as level 2 and 3. Next. Next. Okay, the external nose, first you inspect. Inspect for the external nose, the contour, we call as the contour. Whether the contour is straight, is there a deviation externally seen? Is there a crooked nose deformity? So normally multiple people will have multiple deformities of the nose. Some people will have a pig's snout deformity, some people will have a saddle nose deformity. So whatever the patient has, clearly mention it in your examination paper. If you see a crooked nose deformity, mention there is a crooked nose deformity. External deviation to whichever side. Is the ala retracted or ala, there's in some patients who would have had some injury over the nose, the ala will be constricted on one side, whichever side the nose or the injury has happened. And look at the nose from the front and side for any side. So you stand on the patient's head, on top of the head, and you will see the nose from the top. You see from the front and from the sides to see whether any deformities are seen. So common deformities which we see are the nasal bridge deformity. It is this place where we can see a saddle nose. Saddle nose, nothing but you see in saddle, right? The one they put on a horse. So something like a depression there, or a hump deformity, where some patients will have a hump over this area. Okay. Swelling over the nasal bones, ulcers, the presence of sinuses and infection over the sinuses, and growths on the skin. There could be some warts, there could be some furuncle over the nose, There could be, a malignant lesion over the nose. Common malignant lesion that we see over the skin of the nose is melanoma of the nose. Okay. Any scars due to any accidents or due to any surgeries. Broadening of the nose. Like, this is very important when we see patients with malignancies, or in case of juvenile nasopharyngeal angiofibroma, the nasal bridge is broadened. This area becomes broadened. That means your intercanthal distance between these two eyes will be increased. So that denotes the bridge of the nose is broadened. When the bridge of the nose is broadened, that means we are dealing with some mass inside the nose. So in JNA, the patient will have a frog-face deformity. In sinonasal malignancies, the patient's nasal bridge will be broadened. Presence of any inflammation or complete cellulitis. Classical cellulitis of the nose will occur in case of a furunculosis of the nose, or even some acute sinusitis. You will be able to see a swelling around the nose and over the cheek region. So presence of any swelling, inflammation, broadening of nose scars, everything is important, and it has to be mentioned in your examination sheet. Next. Then you go for, once you inspect and you have written all your points there, you palpate. Normally we palpate with the pulp of the thumb fingers. This is mainly for your nasal bone fractures. So keep your thumb pulp like this and press over this region, okay, to see for crepitus. If you press like this and if you feel a crepitus, like a crackling sound beneath your thumb, that means the patient has a nasal bone fracture. Okay, and also for tenderness. Tenderness is elicited in this region and over the furuncle, over the ala of the nasal cavity, and over the tip when you lift the tip like this. If the patient has pain in these regions, that means we are dealing with a case of nasal vestibulitis or nasal furunculosis. Next. Okay, this is a clear-cut saddle nose deformity. What you see in this patient, this is a post-operative picture of the same patient where she has underwent a rhinoplasty, where we have augmented, not we, the surgeon has augmented. I've just taken these pictures from online. So the surgeon has augmented the nasal bridge. You can see it clearly. This is a side view of this patient. Next. And this is a hump deformity, what I was talking about. So see this hump deformity, and this is a post-operative picture of the same patient where the hump has been reduced. So all these surgeries are done internally. We don't cut anywhere around the nose. We make an incision in the ala here and lift it up, and we go beneath the skin onto the bone, and we try to reduce the hump, whatever is there. Okay, all these procedures are rhinoplasty procedures. Next.
So guys, we're coming to the first doubt session. So far, if anyone have any doubt, they can ask. So we'll be stopping for a while. Thank you.
Any doubts?
You can all use your raise hand option, and we can rectify your doubts as well. Sir can clear your doubts. So looks like there are no doubts. So I think we can carry on.
We'll carry on to the next slide.
Sure, sir.
Yes. So inspect the nasal tip, vestibule, and the nasal airway is your next part of your examination. The nasal tip has to be inspected while sitting in front of the patient, shining the light on the patient's nose, and then use your thumb to lift the nasal tip like this. It has to be lifted like this to see any presence of swelling inside the nose, any bleeding coming from inside, to see for any discharge on the entrance of the nose. So this area, this is called as the vestibule. This entry into the nose is called as the vestibule. And the nasal airway is also, whether there is any masses obstructing the airway. Deviated septum, which is seen very much outside, also can be mentioned here. So this one is called as the columella, the center strut of cartilage, which separates both your nasal cavities anteriorly, is called as the columella here, below the tip of nose. So the columella has to be seen. In case of a grossly deviated septum, there is a columellar dislocation or disproportion is seen. The columella will also be deviated in that case. Okay, so check for the nasal tip, presence of tenderness there. Then nostrils and the airflow. Where the nostrils are, flaring of the nostrils is all right. The flaring of the nostrils is all right, bilaterally equal. That means the patient has no problem with alar cartilages. If there is a problem with nostrils and flaring of nostrils, then the alar cartilages will have some stenosis there because of some injury or previous surgery. Then mist test. Mist is nothing but ask them to blow into a glass and check for the misting of the glass area. It's the same way what we do a cold spatula test. Then condition of the mucosa inside the vestibule. Normally the mucosa will be inside the vestibule, it will be mildly changing from the skin color to a pink color, okay, which is a normal mucosal color. So when that is normal, just leave it. If you seeing a hypopigmented skin or mucosa which is pale looking in color, very much purplish in color in case of allergy, or severely red in color in case of acute infection, or there could also be yellowish swelling there, which denotes a small abscess pocket in the vestibule. So that will tell you as to what we are dealing with. Then you go for furuncle. Furuncle is nothing but for infection of the hair follicle, furunculosis or folliculitis we call it. We have presence of vibrissae. Vibrissae is nothing but the hair follicles present in the interior of the nasal vestibule area. When people try to shave it, cut it, or pluck it, they are the people who are more prone for these kind of infections. They develop nasal vestibulitis or nasal furunculosis. Then fissures, breakage of skin here and there because of meddling with the nose, picking the nose can happen. Dislocated septum, you'll be able to see, like I told you, the columella will be dislocated on one side. Then presence of any tumors or mass over the skin of the nose, or which is arising from inside, you will be able to visualize when you lift the tip of the nose itself. Next slide. Now, anterior rhinoscopy is the first main test that you're going to do. The instrument that we use is called as Pudicum nasal speculum. Okay, so this instrument is nothing but it's a U-shaped instrument with two prongs, which you close it, insert it into the nose, and then open it, release it. So it keeps the nasal cavity opened and widened. So nothing will happen with the patient. The main reason is because the alar cartilages are elastic cartilages, so they expand a little bit. So this expansion is easy for us to keep the nose widely open so that we can inspect the interior of the nasal cavity. Now, what do we check while doing anterior rhinoscopy? Presence of any secretions. It could either be watery secretions, purulent secretions, mucopurulent secretions, presence of blood, and how are the turbinates positioned. The inferior turbinate is hypertrophied or not. How is the mucosa of the inferior turbinate? How is the middle turbinate positioned? Whether there is any mass or a polyp arising from in between these two regions, commonly seen in antroconal polyp. Properties of the mucosal surface, that is, whether it is boggy in case of allergy, cobweb appearance will be seen in case of allergy. Multiple perforations or multiple, blood stain secretions denotes an acute infection, or in case of rhinosporidiosis, we also see that. Some fungal infections could be present over the inferior turbinate, which can also erode the turbinate. Position of the nasal septum. Whether the nasal septum is having a deviation. This is very important for you guys. We talk about deviation all through the while. You are going to have a case of DVD and DVD nasal septum in your experience. We have multiple, deviations. One is anterior, the other one is posterior, the other one is edge-shaped. Next, we have a spur. So an anterior deviation is just a anterior C-shaped deviation of the septal cartilage, which will be seen when you put the Pudicum nasal speculum and shine the light inside. That will be deviated to one side. All right. So the concavity is seen on the side of deviation, whereas the convexity is seen on the side of deviation, and the concavity is seen on the opposite side. So you have to mention both. Convexity seen on the, for example, we have a deviated septum to right. The convexity will be on the right side, whereas the concavity will be on the left side. Presence of any blood, vascular structures there. Small blood vessels which can tear off in the Little's area, which is in the antero-inferior part of the septum, which can also be mentioned in this region. If there is an S-shaped deviation, you can easily say it, where there will be a deviation on both the sides, anterior deviation to one side with a posterior deviation to the other side. And we have presence of any ulcerations or foreign bodies present in the nasal cavity has to be mentioned, and presence of any nasal mass has to be mentioned. Next. Okay. This is what is called the thudicum nasal speculum. This is the way how you hold it. You hook your index finger with the prongs facing the patient. You hook your index finger and stabilize it with your thumb. Then your ring finger and your middle finger should go on either sides of the stem of the instrument and close it. This is closing the thudicum speculum. While closing, insert the instrument into the patient's nose and release it. Once you release, you get this amount of gap. So this is what you see. Once you're done inspecting, close it the same way and then take it out. Don't pull it out just like that. If you do that, you might injure the mucosa and patient may bleed during your examination. And remember guys, if the patient has bleeding during your examination, that's a minus mark for you. That goes in for negative marking. All right. So a light is focused at different sides in nose to examine the nasal septum, the roof, floor, lateral wall by tilting the patient head and also moving the instrument to certain directions, which will give you an idea as to where to see what. Next. So this is one of the schematic representation of the nasal anterior nasal cavity with the anterior rhinoscopy. You can either use it up and down or you can use it on sides depending upon where you want to see what kind of structures. This first structure, what you see in front is the bigger one is called as the inferior turbinate and the one smaller one behind it is the middle turbinate. In this case, you can see a deviated septum with a small spur. So we have multiple findings in this. A turbinate hypertrophy, you can see the middle meatus clearly, you can see the inferior meatus, the floor of the nasal cavity and the septum in a clear way. This is how an anterior rhinoscopy should be done. Next. Okay. Then you check for the nasal passage, whether presence of any mass lesions there. Number 2, because of a septal deviation or a deformity, you can have a narrowed passage on one side, whereas the other side will be quite roomy. If the nasal passages are wide on both the sides and you see the turbinates which are very small and atrophied, then the case is a clear-cut case of atrophic rhinitis, where you see a wide, roomy nasal cavity. The wide, roomy nasal cavity name, the words has to be mentioned when you're taking a case history of an atrophic rhinitis. Then, the position of the septum, presence of deviation or any spur, presence of any ulcers or crusting over the mucosa of the nasal septum, any perforation. Perforations are seen in cocaine snorters, snuff users, or people who keep on meddling with the nose and keep on irritating their nasal mucosa. There can be perforation. Also, due to earlier surgeries and malignancies, you can see nasal perforations. If the nasal septum is bulged both the sides, like a dome on either side, you have to think about either a hematoma or an abscess. Commonly, abscess or hematoma is usually formed following a surgery or an injury to the nose. And in patients who are immunocompromised, that is, uncontrolled diabetes, elderly people who are prone to multiple infections, and also patients with HIV, you have to see the nose for presence of hematoma or abscess. And in case if you see a hematoma or abscess in patients, think about all the conditions I told you. Next, please. Floor of the nose for any defects. In case of cleft palate or even cleft lip up to a certain extent, you can see a presence of depression in the floor, or you can even see a perforation which is in continuity with your oral cavity. The presence of fistula could be identified when you examine the nose and the oral cavity simultaneously. Swelling, if the nasal floor is like this, if it is forming a dome like this, that means something from below is pressing the nasal floor above. This occurs in a dental cyst or a dentigerous cyst. Then presence of any hemangioma or any other benign neoplasms. Bloody mass will be there, reddish mass seen on the nasal floor. Granulations over the nasal cavity. If you see a granulation tissue over the nasal cavity, first of all, think about a forgotten foreign body or an osteoma, like an osteitis, which is an infection of the bone. Roof, you can see the roof clearly in case of atrophic rhinitis and also in case of a normal patient, where if you are able to finally do it and the patient is not very finicky, you can easily see the roof. Otherwise, they won't allow you to see the roof because you need to tilt the patient's head, use the instrument in different angles, and it's going to cause a big mess there. So Try to see the roof in case of atrophic keratitis. In other cases, just say roof is normal if you don't see anything bulging out from the roof. Next. Right. Coming to the lateral wall. Lateral wall is major important anatomical landmark in your nose. It contains all the major structures. All right. So it has 3 turbinates, it has 3 meatai, and it has the entrance for all the sinuses. And anything goes wrong in these area, the patient will also have sinusitis and other conditions which we will see. So first of all, the color of the mucosa. In case of allergic rhinitis, the color of the mucosa will be pale, or it can even turn purplish in case of severe allergic rhinitis, congested in case of acute inflammation or acute infection. The size of the turbinates. During acute rhinitis, allergic rhinitis, the turbinates will be blobby or it will be bulky. All right, so it's going to cause complete obstruction of your nasal cavity. Discharge. Infection from any of the sinuses, from the frontal, maxillary, ethmoidal, you will see a discharge coming out from the middle meatus into the nasal cavity and present over the floor. The presence of a polyp or other benign nasal masses such as rhinopsoriasis, inverted papilloma, which is like polypodal, finger-like projections arising from the lateral wall of the nose, that will also have multiple, presence of a polyp lesions there. So how would we differentiate between a mass, which is a polyp, or a inverted papilloma, or a rhinosporidiosis for that matter, or a carcinoma, is what will be seeing in the probe test, which I'll come to that. And if any growth or polyp is suspected, confirmed by the probe test, which is, we all use an instrument to clean the ears. The ENT surgeons I'm talking about, don't use the buds. Take the Jobson's probe, use a cotton bud, and then wipe it, twirl it around the serrated edges, and then slowly touch the tissue first. You have to check for the sensitivity of the tissue. If the patient has pain, then it's not a polyp. A polyp is a painless mass. Okay, the patient will not feel any pain. But if he has pain, either you're dealing with a carcinoma or you're dealing with the inferior turbinate. Inferior turbinate sometimes looks very bulky, and you might miss it or you might misdiagnose it to be a polyp. So do not touch it too hard, just touch it slightly and see for sensitivity. Then, when you probe it, see for bleeding. If it's bleeding, it should be either any normal nasal tissues or malignancies, or any bloody masses such as rhinosporidiosis, juvenile nasopharyngeal angiofibroma. If you think the mass is going to be a bloody mass, like hemangiomas, juvenile nasopharyngeal angiofibromas, please do not probe, because the patients can bleed torrentially right in front of your eyes on the table, and you might even lose the patient, then go in for shock. So if you suspect a pulsating mass which is bloody, do not touch it. If it's a pale looking mass like in polyp or in allergic rhinitis, you see multiple grape-like clusters right in front of you, or multiple finger-like projections arising from the lateral wall, you can slowly probe it and you can check where it is attached. In a polyp, you can probe all around the polyp because it is arising, the stalk is inside. But whereas any mass which is arising from, whereas a rhinosporidiosis might be attached like this to the septum, or the inverted papilloma will be attached to the lateral wall. You can probe only from sides to sides, but you can't probe where it's arising from. Superior, inferior, you can't probe. Next. Next is posterior rhinoscopy. Okay, anterior rhinoscopy, I'll just brush it along again. First we do a nasal tip examination. You lift up the tip and check for the entry of the nose. Then you insert your tuticum nasal speculum, open it up. We examine your nasal cavity first on one side and then the opposite side. You check for the nasal floor, nasal septum, roof, lateral wall. Nasal floor, you see for any discharge, the color of the nasal floor mucosa, presence of any mass lesions. Then you go to the medial wall of the septum, where you see presence of the deviation of septum. Which side is the deviation? Where is the convexity? Where is the concavity? Presence of any mass lesions there. Ulcerations, perforations, and serrations over the mucosa of the nasal septum and color of the mucosa of the nasal septum. Then you move to the lateral wall of the nose, where you talk about only 2 turbinates will be visible. Normally only one is seen. Sometimes in some patients you will be able to see the middle turbinate. So inferior turbinate, inferior meatus. Middle turbinate, middle meatus. Presence of a polyp, presence of mucopurulent secretions or purulent secretions, any bloody lesions, mass lesions present over the lateral wall of the nose. All these things you have to see. And then you talk about the roof. Roof is seen mostly in case of atrophic tinnitus. Other areas you don't have to see the roof. Then we go for a probe test where you probe the mass lesions. In case presence of a mass lesion, you probe all around to see where it's attaching. You probe for sensitivity, you probe for bleeding, and for the attachment of the lesions. Now going to the posterior rhinoscopy, we do it with an instrument called as posterior rhinoscopy mirror, otherwise the St. Clair Thompson's post-nasal mirror. So how do we do it? Is making the patient sit in front of the examiner, ask him to open his mouth and breathe. Keep his tongue inside. This is the difference between a post-nasal examination and indirect laryngoscopy examination. A post-nasal examination, the patient's tongue is kept inside, whereas in indirect laryngoscopy, you ask the patient to pull out the tongue. That we will see later. So once the patient is sitting in front of you, asking him to open the mouth, using a tongue depressor, depress the tongue, and you slowly introduce the postnasal mirror after defogging. Defogging can be done with the patient's own buccal mucosa. The saliva present there will defog the mirror, or you can use a fire lighter, or you can use some heat waves, or also you can use solutions such as Savlon, which will defog the mirror so that when the patient is breathing, the mirror won't be fogged. Slowly take the mirror in such a way the mirror is facing the tongue of the patient and not the palate of the patient. Go all the way up to the uvula. Do not touch the posterior pharyngeal wall, because if you touch the posterior pharyngeal wall, the patient will gag. And if you are not lucky and the patient had a lot of food, he might right in front of your face, he might puke. So don't do that. So go all the way till the uvula, press the uvula. Okay? And then, sorry, this is the other way. Go all the way till the uvula, turn the mirror slowly. Okay? Turn the mirror slowly, go behind the uvula. Okay? In this way, you will not touch the posterior pharyngeal wall. If you directly go with the mirror facing the palate of the patient and directly go hit the posterior pharyngeal wall, he will have gag reflex. So go all the way till the uvula, press the uvula first, see for any reflex, any patients having gag, any other forms of gag reflex. Slowly twist the mirror so that the mirror goes behind the uvula, visualizing the post-nasal space or the nasopharynx we call it as. So what are the structures we see will be in the next slides. So this mirror is held like a pen carried behind the soft palate without touching the posterior third of tongue and to avoid the gag reflex. Light from the head mirror is focused on the mirror. The mirror should be kept in such a way inside the oral cavity so that the light directly hits the mirror and you see the reflection. Okay, next. So this is a St. Clair Thompson's post-nasal mirror. The difference between this mirror and the indirect laryngoscopy is you see two angulations here. One at the end where the mirror is attached and one in the center of the stem of the instrument. Okay, this is mainly done because it has to go a little bit above and below the uvula so that you will be able to see the structures clearly. We don't try not to touch the posterior pharyngeal wall and move the mirror side to side to see either sides of the posterior end of the nasal cavity. Next. So what are the structures that are commonly seen? So this is the schematic representation on the left side where you see the mirror is placed behind the uvula, and then you will be able to see all these structures. So number one is you see the posterior end of nasal septum. Number two, the choana. Choana is nothing but the posterior nares. Choana is an opening which is present in the posterior end of the nasal cavity, similar to anterior nares. So through this posterior nares, you'll be seeing either side of the nasal cavity. You'll be able to see the posterior end of septum, posterior end of all the three turbinates, namely the superior, middle, and inferior concha are the turbinates. You will see a tubal elevation at first, which is otherwise known as torus tubaris. Then you move laterally, you will see a depression, a tubal elevation, a depression, and then elevation. Okay, a tubal elevation is formed by torus tubaris or Gerlach's tonsil. Okay, then the depression is because of the fossa of Rosenmüller, which is the starting point or the originating area for nasopharyngeal carcinoma. Then another elevation with a small depression. Elevation with a depression you will be seeing, that is the eustachian tube orifice. So eustachian tube orifice more laterally, formed by, then you have the fossa of Rosenmuller, then you have the torus tuberous. Next. So like I told you, posterior end of the bony septum, posterior end of all the three turbinates, posterior nares of the choanae, eustachian tube openings, fossa of Rosenmuller, the nasopharynx as a full structure, the roof, the posterior wall of nasopharynx, presence of adenoids if it's present, nasal surface of the soft palate and the uvula you will be able to see. Next.
Guys, so we have come to the second segment, doubts session. So if anyone have any doubt, please feel free to ask. Sir can surely clear it out for you guys. Thank you.
Any questions, guys? Nope. Any you guys are understanding it, or it's kind of, am I going very fast?
No, so we understand.
Thank you, Anjali. Yes. So shall we move on to the next slide, or you want another 10-second more break?
Let's continue, sir.
All right. Yashwant, please.
Sure, sir.
All right. Next, we do this. All these things, what you've seen so far, is for your pathological examination to see for any presence of disease and the disease, what it has done to the mucosa and inside the nasal cavity. The next one is for the functions. To check for the patency, we do two tests. One is a spatula test. That is, you place a tongue depressor, ask the patient to inhale, hold his breath, keep the tongue depressor below his nasal cavity, and ask him to breathe out. When he breathes out, it's a cold spatula, it's a cold instrument, right? So warm air, when it falls on the cold instrument, there will be fogging on either sides. Whichever side has a deviation, or whichever side has a polyp, whichever side has a narrow nasal cavity, will be less fogged compared to the other side, which will be more fogged. All right, so what you have to infer from it is decreased fogging on left side or right side has to be mentioned. Next, cotton wool wisp test is you take a cotton and make it into a thin wisp and place it in front of the patient's nose, ask him to breathe on one side, then repeat it on the other side. Whichever side moves faster has normal or a roomy nasal cavity, whichever side is moving less has a block there. So that is another inference you get. So whichever side the misting is less and the movement of cotton wool is less, that side has some pathology. Next. That's how a cold spatula test is done. Ask the patient to inhale and keep a tongue depressor below. You'll be able to see the fogging like it's seen in the, it's not clearly seen, but you'll be able to clearly see when the patient breathes out. Next. Then sense of smell. Normally we should carry few things, at least, coffee, essence of rose. I understand it's difficult, but if you can get it, good. Cloves in a box, peppermint in a box, okay, and these should be kept in a box, tight container. Ask the patient to close the eyes. He can easily find out if the eyes are open. So blindfold the patient and then keep the substance just below the nasal cavity. Ask him to sniff. If he is able to identify the smell, in this way we are checking for the smell sensations. In patients with polyps, severe allergy, marked lesions in the nasal cavity, COVID, so all these patients won't be able to smell properly, right? So with this, we can find out the smell sensation is intact or it's lost. Next. Now, your nose examination is not only complete with just checking your nose anteriorly and posteriorly. You also have to check for your paranasal sinuses, which forms the major, structures around your nose, eyes, and the brain. So we have three paired sinuses and one unpaired sinus. One is the maxillary. We have one maxillary sinus on either side. We have multiple ethmoidal air cells on either side of the septum and two frontal cells above the eyes. And there is only one sphenoid sinus. If you had seen, there is no sphenoid sinus in this slide. We have only maxillary, frontal, and ethmoidal. Why don't we have a sphenoidal here? Anyone can answer? Can anyone answer?
Guys, please feel free to answer.
Yashwant, you can answer, not a problem at all.
Sure, sir, because we can't palpate it, sir.
Exactly. So the presence of sphenoid sinus is posterior. It is the posterior most sinus. It is present behind the nose, above the nasopharynx. It's not very easy for us to put the finger inside the oral cavity or the nose to palpate. Whereas the other sinuses are present right here. So you can easily palpate. And why we are palpating in these areas will come in the next slide. Next slide. Okay. So you see this, the maxillary sinus is like an inverted pyramid. All right. And also this frontal sinus is like an inverted triangular shape or a flask shaped sinus, we call it as. So the sinuses, maxillary sinus dependent part is at the area where it is the apex of the maxillary sinus is there and not at the base. The base is below the eyes, whereas the apex is just above the palate. So that is the most dependent part. Any collection of secretions will press over this region and can cause pain. So when you press over the canine fossa here, so this is your canines, and just above the canines you have the canine fossa, which forms the lower border of the maxillary sinus. So when you press there and the patient has tenderness, so diagnose him as a case of maxillary sinusitis. For ethmoidal sinusitis, we palpate 1 centimeter, medial to the medial canthus. This is the medial canthus, and medial to the medial canthus over the nasal septum, on the sides of the nasal septum or the nasal bridge. This is for the ethmoidal sinus. And 1 centimeter above the ethmoidal sinus or 1 centimeter above the medial canthus, we palpate for the frontal sinus, because the frontal sinus drainage or the pathway where it comes down in the nasal cavity is at that area, which is the most dependent part. And if you press there, the patient has tenderness, you can easily find out the patient has frontal sinusitis or not. In some cases, acute sinusitis, or in severe cases of frontal sinusitis, the patient might present the swelling in this region, which is called as a Pott's puffy tumor, otherwise osteomyelitis of the frontal bone, which occurs due to recurrent frontal infections. The bone also gets infected, which will come out into the skin, or sometimes it will rupture the skin and you can see a swelling and pus discharge there. Next. Why do we want to examine the neck? Because the anterior nose drains into the submandibular region, which is the anterior triangle of neck, whereas the posterior nose drains into the upper, middle and deep jugular lymph nodes, which is level 2, 3 and 4 sometimes. Normally level 2 and 3 is the place where it drains. So you have to check for presence of nodes in case of nasal cavity examination also. Next. Okay, here are some videos. He is my helper in my clinic, and with his permission and consent, I have taken this video. And this shows how a patient is positioned and how close an ENT surgeon is associated with the patient. Play, please. You have to sit as close to the patient and lift up the nose. Okay, this is the positioning. Next video. See it once more. This is how the patient's nasal tip has to be raised and the light has to be shined inside the nasal cavity. See that? You have to check for either sides of the nasal cavity. Next. This is examination of the neck, where you stand behind the patient's head, flex the neck and turn the head towards the same side, and then with 3 of your fingers palpate for the nodes in the regions I told you, especially the anterior group, the upper, middle and deep jugular group, and the posterior triangle. See, there's a posterior triangle which I'm palpating now. Okay, presence of nodes tells us whether the patient has any infection, any mass lesion. Okay, so flexing the neck makes the structures superficial, it becomes lax, and the nodes, if it's present, it will be easily palpable. So always flex the neck and then you examine the neck in some way and see what I'm doing. I'm not palpating both the sides simultaneously, because if I do, I'll be doing a carotid massage and the patient will directly fall down. He will go in for a hypoxia changes. Next video. So this is examination of the paranasal sinuses, where I'm palpating for the maxillary sinus of the canine fossa, for the ethmoidal sinus medial to the medial canthus, and for the frontal sinus 1 centimeter above the medial canthus. Next video. Okay, this is a postnasal mirror examination. Since I didn't have a postnasal mirror in my clinic, I used an indirect laryngoscopy. Play it again. I didn't do the test completely because I do not want to hurt him or give a gag reflex for him. So for demonstration purposes, you depress the tongue with your left hand, and using your right hand, introduce the mirror inside the oral cavity and go behind the uvula and visualize the structures in the postnasal space and in the posterior part of the nasal cavity. Next. So this is an anterior rhinoscopy examination where the light is shown into the nasal cavity and you will be able to see the structures. You can see the inferior turbinate for him clearly in this area. So when the light has to be shown properly inside so that it is not split anywhere else, and make sure it is not falling on the instrument, because the instrument is a metal. It will reflect the light on back to your face. So the light has to go into the nasal cavity when the instrument is used. See how I'm using the instrument. So closing it, taking it out, closing it, putting it in again, and you have to close it and take it out again. See, that's the way a ptuticum nasal speculum examination or anterior rhinoscopy examination has to be done. Right, next. Okay, we are come to the end of the session today. I'll just quickly brush up or rush through all the things which we have done today. So you will be having a little bit left in your mind. Please go back, read your textbooks so that you will have an idea as to how it is done. So the video is done for your benefits, so that you will know how to position yourself, how the patient should be positioning himself, what are the instruments we use, how do we use the instruments, and how do we do each and every test. Okay, I haven't done cold spatula test, or I haven't done cotton wool test. Also, I am not mentioned about Cottl's test here. Cottl's test is again a functional test where you pull the cheek of the patient like this on one side. If the patient has a deviation, for example, this is my right side, and if I have a deviated nasal septum to the right side, and if I pull my cheek like this, my ala, it also gets pulled along, creating a bigger space in this region. Once the ala gets pulled along, the space in the anterior nasal cavity expands so that the air is going inside. So the block will be relieved. So this is Cottl's test. If the block is relieved while performing a Cottl's test, that means the deviation is anterior and the patient will benefit with septoplasty. If you do a Cottl's test and the patient's not relieved with this nasal block, that means the deviation is continuing posteriorly also, where the patient's block is continuously there. So you need a septoplasty along with submucosal resection, which is correction of the nasal septum posteriorly. You do not do submucosal resections for children because we are dealing with bones and removal of bones there. We do not do a submucosal resection up till the age of 17 or 18 years. Only after that, we deal with the bones and removal of the bones. For a child, if you want to do a septoplasty, for an adult, you can do a SMR. Okay, so we saw about examination of nose, the external nose, the contour, the shape, presence of any scar sinuses. Then we went to the nasal tip, the vestibule, which is the entry into the nose, the columella, and the nasal floor. Any presence of mass lesions, bleeding, discharge coming out, or presence of any abnormalities, any malignant changes. Then you go into the anterior rhinoscopy, which we do with the ptuticum nasal speculum. The video shows how we do it, Then into the anterior endoscopy, you talk about the floor, roof, lateral wall, medial wall. Medial wall is your septum, where you talk about a deviation, the presence of concavity, convexity, any other lesions present over the septum. In the lateral wall, we talk about the inferior, middle, and superior turbinates, the respective meatai, presence of discharge there, and presence of polyps or mass lesions there. Moving on to the posterior endoscopy, we perform with a post-nasal mirror examination, which is a St. Clair Thompson's post-nasal mirror. Depress the tongue using a tongue depressor with the mouth open, patient right in front of you. Introduce the mirror into the oral cavity and visualize the areas in the post-nasal area, which will be the nasopharynx, the eustachian tube laterally, fossa of Rosenmuller, torus tubaris. Then you will be having the posterior wall of nasopharynx, the posterior end of nasal septum, and all the three turbinates, choana, and the posterior end of or the nasal end of your soft palate and uvula. Then we move on to the paranasal sinus examinations, maxillary sinus over the canine fossa, ethmoidal sinus medial to the medial canthus, and frontal sinus 1 centimeter above the medial canthus. All right. Once you're done with this, you move on to your neck examination and complete your finding. Okay. So once you're done with examination, if in your history the patient also complains of ear block, you have to use otoscopic examination for ear. If the patient complains of throat irritation and frequent clearing of throat or postnasal drip, you examine the posterior pharyngeal wall and presence of any infection in that region. I'm not going deep into the examination of ear or throat because you have separate sessions for that by separate people. So let me finish with this thing. And then once you're done with this, the major part is your discussion. So shall we discuss?
Yes, sir.
So anybody wants to ask any questions before I go in for what are the investigations that we do and what are the treatment protocols? Any questions there? Anyone has any doubts so far?
Sir, we have a message
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
from Aparna S. Nair. She have asked, sir, how is rhinolite formed?
Okay, a rhinolith is nothing but a presence of calcium crystals or calcium stones salts formation over a forgotten foreign body or a granulation tissue which is present over the nose, which is not treated. Okay, so normally seen in children when they put a piece of paper or a piece of plastic, a piece of thermocol ball or whatever, that's going to go and get stuck into the nasal cavity, not going to and fro in the front and back. So presence of secretions in that area causes dryness after some time. This dryness forms a small layer above it, over which this calcium crystals gets deposited. That's how rhinoliths form. It takes a lot of time. It doesn't happen in a day or two. That's why we say it's usually after a forgotten foreign body. A foreign body, the child won't give any history, the mothers won't find. They will come with unilateral nasal bleeding and foul-smelling discharge unilaterally. So that's how a rhinolith is formed. You're welcome, Aparna. Any other questions? No? What happens if patient gags during examination? Okay, number one, you don't have to do the postnasal mirror examination. And luckily for you, you can just say postnasal mirror examination attempted, patient not cooperative. Okay, but if you really want to do it, I would advise you to use every ENT OPD will have a 10% lignocaine spray. It's a local spray, local anesthetic agent. Ask the patient to open the mouth and spray it in the posterior pharyngeal wall. So the patient will not have any sensations there for a few minutes. So within that time, you can use the instrument and you can go all the way back. Even if you touch the posterior pharyngeal wall that time, he will not gag. But make sure the patient has not had any food at least for the past 1 to 2 hours. If he had had food, even the spray won't help you. You're welcome, Ajit. Any other questions? Or we'll move on to the discussion. Okay. So coming to the investigations, there are certain investigations that you have to do. Number one, you see a discharge, you take it for culture sensitivity. Start the patient on appropriate antibiotics. Number two, we have something called as diagnostic nasal endoscopy, which is a 4 millimeter diameter rigid telescope with a 0 degree, 30 degree, 45 degree, and 70 degree angles we have, which is done to examine the nasal cavity from anterior to posterior. And also it has 3 passes. We say 3 passes: the first pass, second pass, and the third pass. First pass is to visualize the septum, floor, inferior turbinate, inferior meatus, nasopharynx. Right? The second pass is to see your middle meatus, middle turbinates. The third pass is for your superior meatus, sphenoethmoidal recess, and superior turbinate. So these are the 3 passes that we do with the diagnostic nasal endoscopy. Then you go for all the investigations like hematological investigations if you're planning up the patient for surgery. Then radiological investigation. Radiological investigation plays a major important role in your nose case. You can diagnose a deviated septum, you can diagnose sinusitis, presence of mass lesions, and also other few points which I will tell you will be very important. So number one, X-ray we do. There are 2 views for sinuses. One is X-ray paranasal sinuses, Waters view, otherwise known as occipito-mental view. So this Waters view shows all the sinuses, presence of haziness. If there is opacities, opacifications, that is hazy white seen in any of the sinus, you call that as sinusitis. The presence of a deviated septum will also be easily appreciated. The other view is called as a Caldwell view. It's mainly for the frontal sinus, where your frontal sinus will be more pronounced. Caldwell, C-A-L-D-W-E-L. So Caldwell view is for the frontal sinus mainly, and Waters view is for the paranasal sinuses. Then we have a CT scan. CT scan, nowadays we do CT scan for most of the patients with sinusitis because X-ray is just a 2D image, whereas CT is a 3D image in different views and different cuts we get it. So CT scan is not only diagnostic, but it also acts as the roadmap before you perform any sinus surgery. Without a CT scan, do not perform any sinus surgery. Why? Because a sinuses will have multiple normal abnormalities, normal anatomical variants. That means the middle turbinate can be rotated to the opposite side instead of shearing towards the lateral wall. Presence of multiple ethmoidal air cells, which are as Haller cells, Onodi cells, again I say cells, which are anterior-ethmoidal cells, which can block the sinuses pathway. Then presence of the anterior-ethmoidal nerve. Where is the optic nerve is present? The sphenoid sinus presentations. Frontal sinus, any presence of cells in the frontal sinus ostium. This you will slowly see when you talk about sinusitis. But I'm just giving you a gist now. Don't need to go deep into it. The CT scan is a roadmap, and also it helps you in clear diagnosis, and it's a 3D representation of your nose and paranasal sinuses. Then we go for the blood investigations. Then you take up the patient for surgery. Commonly, we do a septoplasty for an anterior deviation and submucosal resection for a posterior deviation of the septum. You can do it endoscopically or normal conventional method. Then you have functional endoscopic sinus surgery for your sinus surgeries. If the sinusitis, the polyps are present, you do an endoscopic polypectomy. You can use a microdebrider, which is a powered instrument. So these are the different types of surgeries that are available for you, and that's how we move on to with your diagnosis and with your help of your investigations, you will move on to the perfect treatment for the patient. Any queries? We're done.
Guys, if you have any queries, please feel free to ask. We're almost end of the session.
No queries? No questions? No doubts at all?
I believe we don't have any doubts, sir. It was pretty much a clear session, actually.
Okay. So anything you can always, like I told you, you can always text me and ask me. Not a problem at all. So let's finish with this. We can stop the recording, I think so.
Yes, sir. We have few announcements to make.
Yes, boss.
Yes, sir. Uh, yes, sir. So we'd like to once again appreciate 3 of our volunteers of New World Protocol, Ms.
Thank you,
Vardini,
thank you, thank you.
Shalini, and Tulasi for their constant support and helping us preparing the mnemonic part of the session. So thank you, guys.
Thank you.
So yes, guys. So we are end of the event now. So we'll be sending a feedback form in the Google Meet. I believe it have already posted by now. So hope you guys fill it up so that we get a feedback from you, and we'll get to know like how much more we can improve this, or do you like it? Do you want it to be more interactive or etc. Anything, you can just feel free to give us a feedback on it so that we'll look into it. So thank you all so much, and thank you so much, sir, once again for coming forward to do this session with us. So really, we are really grateful for you to come forward for this.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Yes,
you,
sir.
guys.
And
Yeah.
one more thing is, as you know, guys, this is an initiative, so we are looking for more volunteers. So feel free to join us if you like, and yes, be a brainstormer. So join the force with us, New World Protocol. So you can approach any one of us. You can approach me as well to join the volunteer group. So we'll be doing a lot of upcoming events, not only in medical aspect. We'll be doing other fields as well. So we'll be discussing, and you can also put forward your own ideas as well, so we can fulfill as a team.
Yes.
So
And,
you all happy? Yes, sir.
yeah.
Yes, sir. Please, sir.
And please feel free to ask questions. Like I told you, this is not a classroom, and I'm not going to remember names or anything. This is a one-on-one session. You can directly ask a simple. I'm telling you, which I missed in my UG days is just a direct question. I was like, why do you have to hold the Tudicum like this? It can be because there are different ways of holding it. I'm not telling it now. Later, when we meet in person, in case, I'll tell you. There's another way of holding the Tudicum speculum, which is very easy than using this method. So you can ask, why can't you hold it that way? Why only this way it should be held? So everything has an answer. It could be just a very simple question, which you might think, oh my God, I can't ask this question. This question is going to be too simple, and I don't want to ask. No, don't think like that. Feel very much free to ask whatever questions you want to ask. Don't hesitate. This is a friendly session. This is just to learn. I'm going to learn from you, and you're going to learn from me as well. So please keep it open in that way so that everybody gets a chance to talk here. All right. That's it. I'm done.
Sure, sir. Thank you, sir, Yashwanta, and the organizers. It was so informative, helpful.
Sure, Anjali. Thank you so much. And yes, thank you all so much. And also, yes, the organizers, it's not only me and sir, there's a team behind working along with us, in the background. So thank you, guys. So yes, guys, so we are towards the last segment of this session. So you all been a lovely audience. Thank you all so much for joining. And just a reminder, this is part of a series. So we'll be still having few more classes. And we'll be having another session with Dr. Somo as well. He'll be taking examination of ear soon. We'll be releasing the dates and the details very soon. And we have one more session with Dr. Vivek as well. So we'll be updating you all guys soon as well. So thank you all so much, sir. And thank you, sir. Thank you so much for coming forward today.
See you soon. Bye-bye. Have fun.
Bye. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Good night.
Take care. Have a great day, sir.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.